very inspired by Stripe and AWS, these sort of like large scale infrastructure companies that felt very visionary because they realized that there were like the same problems that every company in a sector, every company in the startup industry were going to deal with. And they basically took those and built just almost like consumer level experiences for the developers, and built them to a point where it's like so easy to use and the economies of scale were so clear that they just became the defaults within the industry. So if you look at that for AI or for machine learning, there were kind of three main ingredients. There's compute, so GPUs and other chips to power the incredibly data intensive and compute intensive algorithms. And as we've seen, almost the entire industry outsources to Nvidia at this point. There's talent, which there's no way to outsource really, but talent is this place where these companies obviously are spending huge amounts of money. Engineers at these firms are making millions and millions of dollars. They have teams of hundreds and hundreds of people, so they're spending on the order of billions of dollars, on the talent, full stop. And then there's data. And each of these three ingredients were such, there's such big pieces of the overall AI component tree that if there were companies that could solve them in a very high class way and a very high quality way, they were going to be used. They were like infrastructure. The industry demanded, an infrastructure layer for each of these components. So that's really the way I look at it. I mean, I think that there's for each individual company, they have this option, which is, do I build it in-house or do I use the sort of like industry infrastructure? And most companies take an approach, which is like, there's a few things where it makes sense for me to build things on my own to differentiate myself. But you have to accept that you're going to do those things, like generally speaking, less efficiently than the industry standard because of the economies of scale and network effects that the infrastructure providers have. So you got going around that, and obviously your use cases have been expanded today. We've seen what generative AI looks like, companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and many others. So where do you all play in the reinforcement learning, human feedback paradigm? Like, can you apply the similar primitives that you got going on there to now this world of generative AI? Yeah, so I think one of the craziest things about modern day AI is that most of the capabilities of these models are taught by data. It's not, you don't have the AI systems, you still don't have AI systems that are just sort of like learning on their own and just like, randomly demonstrating these very human skills. They're taught to them by large scale data sets and human data. So, what we do, we build what we call a data engine, which is basically, similar framing, kind of the refinery for raw data in the ecosystem. But that data engine powers every leading LLM in the industry today, effectively. Basically every large language model is powered using Scale's data engine. And the specific technique or the specific approach is what you just mentioned, reinforcement learning with human feedback. Can you explain that for people that maybe don't know that term? Yeah. So this was a technique that we actually worked with OpenAI back in 2019 on the very first experiments of. But the basic approach is that you teach a model what good looks like. So you teach a model how to assess whether or not one answer or one response is better than another. And it learns that through a bunch of examples where human experts are sort of teaching it. So a human expert will say, this one's better than that one, and here's why, and the model can learn off of that, and then know what good looks like. And so then when by the time it gets to actually producing results, it has an internal sense of what good looks like and what bad looks like, and what's better than another thing. It's called a reward model. And then it does what's called reinforcement learning. It basically uses that internal sense of what good looks like to optimize its own responses. And what that means is that this allows the models to actually exceed human performance